Hello, everybody, and welcome to Art School Live. My name is 𝗪𝗹𝘁𝗶𝘁𝗍. I am filling in for our dear friend Eric Rhodes, who is out and about on a new art adventure. I'm sure you'll hear all about it when he returns. And today we have special guest all the way from Ireland, Conor Walton, and he is in the middle of this crazy thing that he's doing, and I can't wait to tell you all about it. So without further ado, Conor, welcome to Art School Live.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be invited and to see you again. It's a long time since I've seen you.
It has been a minute. So I think we actually met for the first time at one of Eric Rhodes' other events that he was hosting, a track conference or face conference or what?
Yeah, it was a track conference, and you sat for a portrait demo that I was doing that I sweated through. Yeah, I think I still have that somewhere.
Oh, I had a great time sitting for you. And you know what? As somebody who's actually sat with a portrait for you, I'm so excited that we have you here today, because I understand that you are going to be painting so many portraits today as part of an event that you're doing in Ireland. So give us just a brief overview of what you're about, and then we'll get the show started.
Okay, well, today is there's a sort of a nationwide day of art events that sort of culminates in the evening, and it's called Culture Night. And basically, after work, after 5 or 6 o'clock, everyone goes around the town wherever they are and sees what's going on culturally. So there are concerts and drama things and readings and art exhibitions and all sorts of things going on. And what I'm doing is I am doing a portrait marathon in the library in 𝗪𝗹𝘁𝗶𝘁𝗍, which is my native town. And my plan was to do 18 portraits in 12 hours.
Wait, let's repeat that. 18 portraits in 12 hours. Okay, I am going to stop you there. We're going to do our intro really quick, and then we're going to jump right back into this. So
it's Art School Live with Eric Rhodes. Now, here's your host, Eric Rhodes!
Hello, everybody. You may have noticed that I am not, in fact, Eric Rhodes. My name is 𝗪𝗹𝘁𝗶𝘁𝗍 with the School of Atelier Arts, and I am filling in for Eric this week. And again, we have Conor Walton, all the way from Ireland, who is in the middle of a portrait marathon as we speak. And I'm so excited to get to watch him paint with you all today. So, Conor, take it away.
Well, yeah, I am going to paint Adam here, and yes, they can't hear you, but yeah, they're saying hello. Yeah, so I've got the headphones on. It's a bit noisy here, so I've got the headphones on. So if there's no feedback, you know, I'm in a public library. There are kids. There's all sorts of things happening. There'll be a concert on here later, but I'm painting. And I have you can turn around here. These are the portraits that I'm doing, that I've been doing, and I'm going to take one of my blank panels and stick it on the easel.
So this is so exciting. Not only are we going to get to see not only are we going to get to see you paint a portrait, but we also get to learn a little bit about how to paint with distractions around us, right? You're in a library, there's kids, you're doing 18 portraits. So this is like...
Yeah, and I've got Mandy in my ear.
That's a real mischievous person you have in your ear too. So
yeah.
So many things going on. And so do you have any tricks or tips for our audience about how to paint in a more chaotic environment?
I don't know. I think it's you just have to go with the flow, I suppose. A lot of the chaos of this is actually being caused by the technology, because I'm multicasting. I've been trying to multicast the whole thing, and I've got phone batteries dying and all sorts of things happening. So I've had, I've had this going on for half the day. So I've been on YouTube. I decided not to sort of double up and try to be multicasting you, multicasting me. So my YouTube channel is down for the
Yeah.
moment.
So to our audience, this is an exclusive. He even cut off his stream for other people. So you're lucky to
That's
be here at Art School Live to see this demo.
that's it. So it's all pretty messy at this point because this is my 9th portrait, and I've got my palette set up here, which is a bit, I haven't changed the paint. It's
Okay.
all
Can you tell us
it's
what paint and what surface you're using?
okay. I'm painting on, like, my palette is a stainless steel panel on a sort of a little trolley, and it holds my powder pigments. I do a lot of making my own paint. I've got my brushes at the back, got a little bit of solvent, and lots of palette knives and things. And the surface that I'm working on, it's just a little panel, and it's covered with a fairly neutral tone just to help me set up. It's the sort of gray that I think of as the sort of half tone of flesh color.
Okay.
So it's a useful color to put anything on when you're painting skin or flesh or anything like that. So it just helps as a starting point, and it's a slightly grippy surface as well. It's a slightly sort of sandpapery surface, so the paint sits very sets very well, very quickly. So that's one of my tricks, I suppose.
Yeah, so it seems like you're setting yourself up to paint quickly. Having a tone canvas, it's giving you some midtones to work from, and also using a grippy canvas that's going to grab that paint off your brush while you're working it to do 18 portraits in one day.
Yeah, I really don't like slippy, slidey canvases, and I don't like chirpy paint. So I try to get something that will really set up and hold the paint fairly quickly, and get me going, and that I can do palette knife stuff and stuff like that as well fairly quickly if needs be.
All right. So there are a couple questions. There's a lot of interest in your powdered paint, and people are wondering, like, you do that on site? You're mixing up your paint on site from powder?
Yes. I do most of that. Like today, just because for speed, I've ended up going back to a few of my tubes, but some of the paint on there was handmade today, and I sort of made a decision a while ago that I wouldn't replace most of my tubes. That I would just, when the tubes ran out, I'd just go to powder and oil, and to me it's a nicer paint. It's a more interesting paint. So that's what I am doing these days.
Okay. What makes it better to go from a powder versus a tube? Like, what differences do you?
Well, the particle size is larger. That's one thing. So it's a denser, more bodied paint, and it holds impasto better. It resists better. I think that the particles. The particles in pigment paint today are just too small. They're about 1/10 or less the size of pigment particles in old master paintings, and they're produced generally for industry rather than for artists. Often to come out of a spray can or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then when the manufacturers make them, they put them through a mill, and mm-hmm. that breaks them down even further. So you get paint that tends to lack body, and I like body. I like a paint that has physical, a sense of substance to it. So that's why I make them. It also dries faster, and it's better stuff because it doesn't have fillers. It doesn't have stabilizers. Mm-hmm. I'm just making up. It's just linseed oil and pigment, and there's nothing else in it. And when it's fresh, you can adjust the oil content. You can play with it a lot more than you can, with tube paint. It has to be a certain consistency to go into the tube and not separate. So right. I can just decide exactly how I like my paint to be on the day, and it doesn't take very long. I don't mull my pigment. I just mix it with a palette knife. That's all you need to do.
That's fantastic. I have not attempted to make my own paint, and you are inspiring me.
Oh yes, it's great. It's great fun. It's like baking, it's like making your own bread, It's just, why wouldn't you, it's so
Never
easy.
That's why I don't know. But I'm excited to see what you do with this paint. So what are your first steps on your portrait here?
Well, the first step is sit down and look at the sitter.
As opposed
maybe
to
bring
yeah.
this in as close as you can to keep.
Yeah.
I will fade into the background so that the sitter and the canvas is on camera.
Yeah, if you
And
could get even closer, that would be great.
So you'll be able to hear me,
Mhm.
mainly you'll be able to hear me sweat and
the drips.
yes, you'll hear me sweat, and I will try to not moan and groan too much while I'm doing the job.
Well, what you're aspiring to do is really impressive because, as a painter, doing even just one portrait can be mentally exhausting. And not only are you doing 18 portraits, but you're doing them bam, bam, bam on this marathon, and you're giving yourself so little time for each portrait. So I really admire your mental fortitude here.
Okay, well, I'm going to start. Are you ready, Adam? You're ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to start. I'm just going to start by just sticking in a bit of background color so that I've got a very rough shape. And it's like, ooh, there's a head.
I love that.
This is where everything starts to malfunction.
Are you working site size or comparatively here?
It's not technically side size, but it's not too far off it. One of the annoying things about this the setup is that I'm working so fast. I'm dealing with lots of different sitters, and they're all different heights. And Adam's a big guy, and the last person I painted was a child who was her head was like a foot underneath his position, and I didn't bother to try to change the easel because it's like, oh, no time, I'll just have to wing it. So it's roughly side size, but not exactly. And I'm not doing any of the measurement business that usually goes with side size. I'm just splodging away and trying to find some shapes that roughly correspond, and then it's all a process of approximation. I find this process of sort of splodging into a picture much more forgiving than drawing in some ways, because you can correct a lot as you go. But I just try to find shapes and colors that are reasonably accurate. I'm working with there are basically three colors, like colors on my palette, which are brown ochre, red ochre, and Indian red, and then black and white. And most of what I've been doing has just been with those.
Can you repeat those colors one more time for our audience, please?
They're brown ochre, red ochre, and Indian red.
Okay, excellent.
And then black and white.
You said, but I'm not good at hearing through your delightful accents, so I wanted to double check.
So, just the leg of the tripod, the camera tripod is in my way. So I'm just going to see if I can roughly just find some shapes here to get a very rough idea of Adam's head here. And it's really like I'm not really concerned greatly with accuracy. it's not hugely accurate. It's sort of like, oh, roughly in the area. And what I can often do is adjust the boundaries between the sort of slabs of color that I put on.
Okay, so you're basically drawing by kneading two colors together instead of using a line to draw. Is that a
There's
fair
a bit of that, and sometimes I think of it as a bit like carving as well. That you start off with sort of a block of wood, and you just take chunks out of it until it has something like a shape that you might find acceptable, and you keep just refining the thing until you get a half decent shape. And just keep everything as spontaneous as I can, and to some extent just trust my instincts and don't overthink, and don't panic. I think that's the biggest thing. Don't panic. Panic. I'm panicking.
Yes. So from an artist's point of view, I'm curious, how did you select your subjects, or how did you get 18 people to sign up and show up for these portraits?
I just put it out on social media basically, and I got a response. So I've done this before. The thing is, I'm being paid to do this by Wicklow Arts Office, who are underwriting this project. So I basically said, hey, will you pay me to paint portraits and give them away to people? And so if people are offered free portraits, they tend to be very happy to come along. And that's what that's how I got them. I'm lucky in that there's a sort of a bit of an art community in Arklow, and there's a WhatsApp group. There's an art collective called the 402 group. 402 is the phone code for our part of Wicklow, so it's known as the 402 group, and they have a gallery and do various things together, and I just put it up on their WhatsApp group, and I think the event booked in 2 hours.
Excellent.
So that was how it happened, and yeah, I could have done this several times over. I'd say I would have got enough sitters if I wanted to do several more of these.
Oh, that's nice. So I'm curious too, for people in the chat, like, what is your relationship with your art community at home? Like, are you in the middle of nowhere? I used to live in this really tiny town in Montana, or work in this tiny town in Montana, and there weren't a lot of other artists in that town. Or do you have a thriving community like what Conor is describing, where he has a WhatsApp group for the people in his area, where he can put a message in there and fill up, all the spots, in a couple hours?
The art community here, Ireland's a small country, I suppose, and a lot of the artists know each other. So there's a lot of the art scene is based around Dublin, which is the capital and the biggest city on the island, and then there's there are various things happening in different places, but I spend most of my time in my cave, like a lot of artists, and I don't get out all that much. I used to get out a lot more, but most of the time I'm in my cave, and and I find now, like even I don't the problem with social media age and having to do so many things is that I often don't even see what my artist friends are doing on social media and stuff like that, because I'm too busy doing my own stuff on social media.
Right.
So it's hard sometimes, but there is a good artistic community here. There are a lot of figurative artists working away, and it's not a bad place to be an artist.
Sure. It seems like
we have a special deal as well with the government because
tell us about the special deal with the government.
Yeah, artists don't pay income tax in Ireland.
What?
So, yeah.
How did artists manage this exception?
Well, at a certain point, we had a politician called 𝗪𝗪 𝗪𝗪 who was he was a finance minister at a certain point, and then he became Taoiseach, or Prime Minister of Ireland, and he set up this tax exemption for artists. He didn't believe in paying tax himself. He was a very corrupt man, as we found out later. But we can thank him because I think he thought he was an artist himself. He of a different type. He decided that artists shouldn't pay income tax, and as a result, it's really helped the artistic community in Ireland.
I'm sure. I see
because it's a different.
Asking how to get to Ireland and be a painter in Ireland.
Well, yeah, you have to apply for refugee status, I think, something like that. But it may not be too hard given the way things are going politically in your country to get refugee status.
We avoid politics on this show at Art School Live, but it is fascinating how different countries' policies towards artists can create a community or support painting, and also that you're on some sort of government grant to do this painting that you're doing right now, is my understanding. That's correct?
Yes. Well, each county has a budget for art events, and they do, they'll do their own things to some extent. It varies very much from county to county, but you make proposals and sometimes you get listened to. So it depends. It varies hugely from place to place.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of have to be plugged in or in the know. Sometimes places have opportunities, but if you aren't a part of the board or the nonprofit, you might not hear about them. But it sounds like you have a strong artist community where you are that is sharing information with each other.
Well, there's an organization, the Irish Visual Arts Association. They put out a newsletter, basically a weekly newsletter, and every opportunity, more or less in the county or in the country and some abroad are listed. So you can often see if there's something happening in one place or another, and see if you're eligible to apply.
That's a great resource.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us more about your painting. What's your thought process that you're going through right now?
My thought process is very deep, so deep that I'm not entirely conscious of it.
It's too deep. You wouldn't understand.
Well, I don't understand it, so I'm winging it. I am just winging it and trying to enjoy myself and what might be a stressful situation. But there is sort of fun in the situation. So the main thing I try to do is, have fun and trust my instincts as far as I can in doing this. And I'm particularly having to do this because I'm talking to you. I don't have a fucking clue what I'm talking about. Or, it's part of me is saying, part of my brain is saying, what the fuck are you doing? So, am I allowed to curse? Is that okay? Or is that
we try to keep it clean here. There's children, possibly. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I will try.
I don't know the rules, but Eric isn't here, so maybe we can bend them.
Well, okay, I hope so, but I don't know what I'm doing to some extent. I am working so fast that particularly just with conversation. I find that the whole business of I don't know whether it's right brain, left brain stuff, or just not being the business of painting and talking at the same time, I do find very hard. So I try to plug into part of my brain that is, largely non-verbal and seems to know what to do, to some extent by itself. So it's a funny business talking about art and trying to conceptualize what you're doing and articulate what you're doing sometimes, because I do a lot of it, but often it's after the fact, when I've, either when I've painted the picture or after I paint a picture, I can, analyze it and talk about it. But while I paint the picture, it's hard business, explaining yourself. And sometimes I think you're better off trying, but I have to try here because that's the nature of the event, isn't it? So,
well, you're doing a great job. There's lots of admiration for your work in the chat, and also you're coming along quite well considering you've been answering all of our questions.
Thank you.
Yes. So just a heads up, we have about 20 minutes for you to work, but I will try to give you some focused time here. I know that you're on a focused and timely agenda here.
Well, I'm working away and doing what I can. I try to work, I suppose you could say, from the general to the particular, and sort of block out as much as I can, and not be too precious at the beginning, but allow as much of the entire process to stay visible, so that as much as I can of everything that I've done stays visible up to the end. I think that's the interesting thing. I think, people talk about painting and art in different ways, and there's a sort of often a perceived distinction between modern art and realistic art, or all of these things. But partly because I do this, I think of what I do partly as performance art, and the idea of putting on a bit of a show. Obviously you're watching it now, but sure. I would like anyone who is looking at my painting afterwards to by just examining it, have some idea how it happened. So the painting ends up as a record of mark making, and that it's exciting, and that it's interesting, and that it looked difficult to do, whether you felt it was difficult or not at the time. I think it should look like it was, an exciting or a hair-raising event just to get the thing done.
Yeah. I like this idea that you basically are doing a performance piece through realism right now. That, the performance being how many portraits can I do in a day, and, bringing education to the community that, for one, that portrait artists still exist, because a lot of people have never seen one actually painting a portrait, during their lifetime, and, providing education about, what's possible, that these skills exist, but also the paintings themselves, working in the realism tradition. It's like a traditional and contemporary art piece at the same time, just like you said. That's an interesting way to view it.
Yeah, and it is this interesting question in the sort of the internet age and whatever. I do these things, and many more people may see this picture online or on this event than will ever actually see it in person. People may, hundreds of thousands of people may see this picture on my website or through your live stream, and how many people are actually going to stand in front of it? So where's the real artwork? Is this really a digital artwork, or is it not? Sometimes I find myself asking those sort of questions.
I really like the philosophical bent of your mind. I have not thought to ask myself those questions, but there is something to be said. What do you guys think in the chat? Like, is it a digital art if more people see your art online than see it in person, or is it still a traditional art? What are your thoughts? Let us know in the chat.
So, how am I doing?
So you're doing well. You have about 15 minutes.
Okay. You probably noticed that I'm leaving the eyes and the mouth to last.
I find that I know only one person who puts the eyes in very first, because he says it's so intimidating to save the eyes for last that if I put them in, like, he basically outlines the head and then he puts the pupils of the eye in as his very next thing, just because he doesn't want to wait until the end to deal with them. And I thought that was an interesting approach.
Well, I try to stick to the sergeant, that the eyes, the sort of the most characteristic features are like the denser blemishes on the apple, the sort of the last thing that you'd really try to do. But I am going to, just because time is moving on now, I am going to start shaping the eyes and getting something out of this. And yeah, I think I'm going to just correct a bit in the profile here. I'm actually going to use a palette knife because palette knife will let me go over what's underneath. Just to pull in the profile. Get a sharper edge here. Okay, back you go. Yeah, so it's like, don't be worried about making a mistake. Everything can be corrected.
Especially in oil paint, it stays open so much longer than other types of paint.
Yes, and that is, I find it a very forgiving medium that way. It is, in some ways, it's very messy. But I think you have to enjoy oil paint, you have to embrace the mess and not be afraid to splodge about and make a bit of a mess.
When you are working with your portrait subjects, do you like, what do you say to them when somebody that hasn't sat for a portrait before is about to sit for a portrait? How do you prepare your subject?
I don't know that I do. The last person that sat for me here was a young girl of about 7 or 8, I'd say. And I just, we just had a little chat because I was curious how she felt about the thing, and that she'd been painted before, and she comes from basically a family of artists. So yeah, she was sort of like, yeah, I've been painted before. No big deal.
What a joyful life she leads.
Well, she was really excellent, I have to say. She was very cool and calm and collected. So that made it all a lot easier. But I find I'm not always chatty when I paint, and it's sometimes it's hard to get that side of things, to balance that side of things in the intense work environment that portrait painting is, with talking. Sometimes I just feel like I don't want to talk to this person at all, but then it sometimes you get people who are really chatty and they have something interesting to say, and you just end up chatting away And obviously what often happens is the portrait takes twice as long then. So, yeah, I'm just trying to find, at the moment, I'm looking at the beautiful gray tones that often sit around the eye, and just get those in before I try to indicate some of the lighter tones. But yeah, it's very, I'm being, I suppose you could say in a very literal way, quite impressionistic here, in terms of just blobbing in bits of color and seeing, does that work? And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But I don't really know what I'm doing here half the time. It's just like some part of my brain is telling me, this is the next thing to do. But what it is can be very mysterious.
So there's an interest in the white that you're using to paint. Is that what type of white pigment are you using?
I'm using lead white.
Lead white, okay. And you're making lead white from powder.
I sometimes make it from powder, but this came out of a tube.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in a library, I have to,
yes.
I have to be good.
And just a reminder to all our listeners that Art School Live is not responsible for any materials you may choose to use in your painting, and that lead is sometimes controversial in the atelier world because of it's lead, right? So
yes, yeah, it is. It is very toxic.
Mandy in the School of Atelier Arts is not responsible, and Art School Live is not responsible if you choose to take on the challenge of using lead in your home studios.
Yeah, you have to be very professional using it, and very careful, and particularly very careful if you have kids or anything like that around. But it is, I think if you use it carefully and responsibly, and particularly with the disposal of waste and stuff like that, it is a friendly paint, as someone once described it to me.
I like that. I actually, for those of you who are interested, when Eric was hosting me on this show not too long ago, we did a whole episode on whites and the comparison between lead white and titanium white. So if you're curious to know a little bit more about the differences in the pigments, I encourage you to check that episode of Art School Live out. Do you get tested for metals in your system, Connor?
I haven't done that, no.
I just did it for the first time, and I was clear, and I use lead consistently, so I was happy that it wasn't present or detectable.
Yeah, well, that's great. I'm always afraid of these sort of tests of what they'll turn up. So I sometimes I feel like I stick my head in the sand when it comes to these sort of things. But I don't think I act crazy too. I don't think I act too crazy. So it was something that really bothered me when I was studying in Florence, and people were grinding paint in the atelier that I was studying in, and you could smell it in the air. And it has this particular sweet smell of powder lead, and you could smell it. That's a strawberry sweetness, and you just
know what lead smells like, then maybe you shouldn't get tested and not know.
But that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So with any luck.
Can you tell us a little bit about your training? Some people were asking in the chat, like, how did you, get to the speed level in painting portraits? And do you have any advice for people who are learning?
I studied first of all in NCAD in Dublin. That's the National College of Art and Design, and unfortunately, like a lot of art college experiences, it wasn't entirely happy, and I came out of there feeling like I couldn't draw, and I certainly was drawing worse when I came out of there than I went in, because my youth was a misspent youth of sitting around the place drawing pictures and doing very little else. So when I was in secondary school, one of the secondary schools I attended, I used to hold a portrait salon in the back of French class, and the French teacher was just totally ineffectual, and he was like, "Messieurs, attention s'il vous plaît, asseyez-vous." This was all you heard, and everyone just did their own thing. And I drew portraits from life at the back, and I got rather good at it. And everyone would move around the room to take turns sitting for me and things like that. So
you had
that was
collaborators then.
Yeah, so that was my experience. I built up a lot of good experience and training, and then when I went to art college, no one was interested in that sort of thing, and I didn't do so much of it. But it was, in some ways, it was a difficult period. But I went through art college in the late 80s, early 90s, and it was, I suppose, one of the things about it, just in terms of Irish, the Irish scene, was that it was a sort of a transitional period in some ways. I think there were a lot of people from different periods, different schools. There were still some of the old timers who had been trained. The art schools here. You're talking about Orpin, who would have set up or worked in the municipal art school, which was the predecessor to the National College of Art and Design, and then Sean Keating took over. There were well-trained, very traditional portrait artists. Too traditional in a lot of ways. I think what they taught was often pretty backward and regressive in a sort of a 1930s, 1940s, 1950s period, and some of the rebellion against it was, I think, very well justified. But when I went through, there were some of the old timers who taught me a little bit, not a huge amount, but they were there and they were supportive of what I was trying to do. And then you had conceptualists and abstract expressionists style, and postmodernists, and all sorts of people doing all sorts of things. And there was that, a little bit of a sense of, creative conflict, you might say. But it was it was lively. And then I went.
Just a few minutes left today, so.
Okay.
Yeah. I know.
Okay.
I know.
So I better talk less. I better try and sort this out. It's is it working? Sort of working. I think given how much I've had to talk here, I haven't done too badly. But
I'm
it is
very impressed. Yes, especially the speed at which you painted it. That's unbelievable.
It's it is what it is, and I have to try and enjoy myself through all of this. So that's partly what I'm trying to do, and with any luck, the pleasure of the thing will also communicate itself. But it'll, it's a mass of blobs that looks a little bit like a person, I think. And
a modest description.
So that is a little bit of what I'm aiming at. And then what will I do now? I'll just take a.
Okay, we're getting some appreciation in the chat that I want to make sure to share with you. So Conor, this is a great refresher for me from Andreas, and thank you to Laura. We had talked earlier about tapping the paint to keep the paint away from the top of the tube. And lots of love and appreciation to you, Conor, for participating today and being a part of Art School Live. So we have just about 1 more minute to paint, and then I have to cut you off. So you keep focusing on what you're doing, so everybody watching with us and live streaming with us, this is how, when you are under a crunch painting a portrait, when you have 1 minute left, do what Conor's doing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me along for this, and I hope I haven't humiliated myself too much in the process.
Yeah, you've been a fantastic guest, and we're very, very happy to have you here. And you can tell by the chat that people are really engaged with what you're doing. So thank you for participating with us and adding one more layer to your absolutely insane day today.
Thank you very much, and I hope we'll chat again. And if I can get one plug in, I'm running a summer school here in Dublin, and there are 2 scholarship places. So if people go to my website, you can apply, and it's free.
That is incredibly generous of you. So Conor's running a school in Dublin and has some scholarships available. So you can learn more about Conor at 𝗪𝗹𝘁𝗶𝘁𝗵 on his Instagram, and ConorWalton.com. That's Conor with 1 N. And he also has an exhibit in Berlin until October 24th, 2024. So if you are in Germany, go take a look. You won't regret it.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I also have a free gift for you from Eric Rhodes and Art School Live. You can download this free ebook with 10 steps to become a high-level figure and portrait artist. So you can go to realismtoday.com/ebook and get this amazing resource. It's incredible. He's so generous with what he puts out, and he changes it all the time. And definitely do not forget to register for Realism Live. So there are many forms of realism. For instance, we were talking with Conor just today, a more impressionistic style. There's tighter styles. Realism Live is a 3-day virtual event with an optional essential techniques day that contains art instruction, demonstrations, lectures on art history, artist roundtable discussions. It includes all styles of realism, painting mediums, and subjects from figure, portrait, still life, landscape, floral, and more. And you can learn more about that at realismlive.com. So please make sure to like this episode, show Conor some appreciation for his amazing work today, and subscribe to this channel at Art School Live on YouTube and at Eric Rhodes on Instagram. Again, make sure to follow Conor on Instagram at 𝗪𝗹𝘁𝗶𝘁𝗵. And you can also learn more about me and my work on Instagram at Mandy Fine Artist. And I also run an atelier that you can learn more about at schoolofatelierarts.com. Okay, so let's just take one last look at where Conor is. It'll be our last images for today. And there we have it. Ta-da! Do you have any closing statement for us today, Conor?
Well, phew, thank you. Great to chat again, and thanks so much for inviting me. And I hope you just enjoyed. Like it's 30 minutes. It's a bit of fun.
It's a joy to watch.
Yeah, and I hope it looks like fun. So thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And again, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And thank you for allowing me to be your host this week on Art School Live. My understanding is that Eric will be back by next Monday. So thank you all for being here, and best wishes to all of you on your painting journeys.
Bye.